All right. I think we're live now. Let's see. It seems we're live. Let's start this thing. So hi and welcome everyone. We are just recording the startup of the Hackfest now. You can come in with any questions you got at any time and we will try to answer them in the end. And meanwhile, I'm just gonna explain you what the Hackfest is about and what we're gonna do. And we're gonna talk a little bit with the other maintainers of MvvmCross. We've got Cheese Baron with us today and MvvmCross. That's just their nicknames, but they will probably talk a bit later about themselves, and we talk about questions you have with them, and we'll see how it goes. So first of all, let's have a look at the Hackfest. So everybody came here to get involved with MvvmCross and Xamarin. And basically, it all started with an idea of John Galloway from the .NET Foundation, who thought, let's have a really great open source .NET Summer Hackfest. And MvvmCross applied for that, and we got into the whole Summer Hackfest. And as part of that, we started to think about what we're going to do, how we're going to do this, and we started to make it a bit of a bigger event. And right now, we are working on making this a 2-week event. This is just started right now, and then we will have a fantastic whole day event in Amsterdam. And actually, a lot of people are going to come there from all around the world. And it's really great. If you want to come, please come to Amsterdam and join us on the 2nd of September. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So there are more than 50 contributors who already signed up on taking part in the Hackfest. And I think this is really great. This really shows the power of the community and what we can do together to make MvvmCross even better. Before we get into how you can get started, let's take a brief look at what we did with MvvmCross in the last couple of months. So in the beginning of the year, we introduced MvvmCross 5.0. And I think that was really a big step forward. There were a lot of pull requests merged. There was a lot of code updated. And, you know, that's already a while ago. So recently, we introduced MvvmCross 5.1. And with this release, we focused on fixing all the regressions, all the bugs, everything that was introduced with the release of 5.0. So this was mainly about stabilizing 5, stabilizing, for example, the new navigation service, the iOS presenter, and introducing a couple of new nice features. Also, a big part of that was fixing stuff for Xamarin Forms. We had a lot of that in place, but it was not clear how you need to put it up and what you needed to use. So I explained that in a blog post and did a lot of fixes for that. What are the goals for the 2-week Hackfest then? So one of the big goals for us as MvvmCross, but also for the .NET Foundation and everyone involved with .NET, is to get all the packages on the get over to .NET Standard. And this is because then if we do that and if everyone else does that, the whole ecosystem with .NET is going to be so much better. We can use, sorry about that. We can use then a lot of stuff like, you know, new code, new possibilities, and let me just quickly check, is the stream still on? Yeah. So this makes it possible to, you know, use, for example, package references in your project files to use new C# features or .NET features Other than that, we want to do things like updating and cleaning up all the samples. We've got a lot of samples in MvvmCross in the samples repo, but they're not really that clean. So what's happening there is that, for example, Stuart Lodge, who started MvvmCross, created a lot of them a couple of years back, but they were using locally referenced DLLs, they were using local code. A lot of stuff is going on, so they need cleaning up because the samples themselves are still great. They're great as a reference, but they need just this polishment. So that's a task that's quite simple to get started with. You don't need a lot of in-depth knowledge of MvvmCross, but you can still, work on that and contribute to the .NET Hackfest. Next up is more async code, more task-based code. And this is something, for example, Cheese Baron worked a lot on in the past already, but I think we can improve that on a lot more, a lot more coverage throughout the code base. And it's not that we always need it, so when it's not needed, we're just going to leave it. But it might be nice to, give you some points where you can hook into async code. Maybe Cheese Baron can talk about that a little bit later. So another thing is that it's really easy to get started with is creating and updating website or documentation content. So we have got the whole documentation and the website on GitHub right now, so you can use pull requests to update that. And I think that's really convenient to, start slow, start little with just a contribution. You can start fixing some spelling mistakes, then look into documentation that is there right now, improve it a little bit, or even create new ones that doesn't exist at the moment. Also, we've got up for grabs, that's a label on GitHub on issues that are really easy to get started on, or that anyone wants to work on can just pick it. And I think that there's a lot of that there, and you can just grab one of them, and we will guide you through how you can fix the issue or implement the feature. And the last thing is that we want to join the .NET Foundation. Advantages to joining the .NET Foundation, which we would like to profit from. And this is something that the core team is going to look into in the coming 2 weeks. So MvvmCross vNext /5.2 maybe. So we don't really know what version it's going to be, but let's see how it goes. So the next release, we have already done quite a bit of work for this. And we've worked on new presenters for Android. We've got contributions for a new presenter for WPF. iOS presenters got lots of improvements, the navigation service, but there's lots of things that still need to be done there. And so we're going to be focusing on stabilizing those things that are already there, but there's much more. So as we already talked about, for MvvmCross .NET Hackfest, we have the up for grabs. We've got all stuff in a project set up, and we're going to look at that, how it works. So how are we going to manage all of this? So we thought everybody already uses GitHub. Everybody is contributing through GitHub, so let's use GitHub for managing the .NET Hackfest. We made an organization-wide project, but the thing is that you can only see it if you're a member of the MvvmCross organization. So if you're not, then please leave a message and we'll add you to the project. Other than that, if you want to see it from the outside, you can look at the label. It's got a label .NET Summer Hackfest. So I'm just going to open up this here. And you can see we've got a project, and there's some to-dos in here. There's some in progress, and there's already a bit of done here. So this is great. And then let's go back to the Hackfest, to the presentation, and we've got a label here. And as you can see, there are issues marked with .NET Summer Hackfest, issues marked with up for grabs, and feel free to comment in any of them that you would like to work on it. So if you have any questions, then please ask. If you have any questions when you're working on stuff and you want to have a chat with any of us, then please join the MvvmCross channel on Xamarin Chat. And this is available for everyone. If you want to have a direct link to that, I will just press it right here. This is xamarinchat.herokuapp.com. Put in your email address and you'll be invited. When working on the project, you feel also free to tweet about it. Use the hashtags MvvmCross and .NET Summer, and we will make sure to retweet you, to like you, and if you have any questions, you can always reach us on Twitter as well. Then the MvvmCross Hack Day in Amsterdam. So this is going to be on the 2nd of September, and it's going to be in the Tobacco Theater in Amsterdam. And this is really a great place. We have got exclusive access to the theater for the Xamarin Hack Day, the whole day. And what the program is going to look like is in the morning, we're going to have lightning talks by, for example, MvvmCross lead developers like myself, like Thomas Selesky, the Cheese Baron, Nico, Mark, and Mike James, the Xamarin Evangelist, is also going to come and talk about connecting your app with Azure. So this is really great. Then in the afternoon, we're going to have a Hackfest. In this Hackfest, you can get started contributing to MvvmCross yourself. We will guide you through it right there. And if you're new to app development in general, or new to Xamarin or .NET, please come as well, because you're more than welcome. In the evening, we're going to have a closing party with drinks and some snacks, and this is going to be really great. So this is just a brief overview of the Hackfest. Please ask any questions you have right now, and anyone from the MvvmCross team would be more than happy to answer them. And you can ask the questions through the YouTube window. So, Thomas, can you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts about async code?
Yes, of course. So I already did one branch where I experimented a bit with making the entire startup process async to kind of speed it up. And I already did, yeah, as I said, a lot of work on that. But there are some loose ends in that branch that we need to take care of, such as how we kick off this task, this async task this time around, how we kick it off, and how we keep track of when that task is finished, to be able to navigate to the first view model, etc., etc. So that's basically the loose end we have in that code, but also to bring that branch up to speed, because it was made a long time ago, and there has been a lot of changes in the MvvmCross code since then. So basically, it's either to rebase that on top of the new code, or just take the important parts from that code and reapply it on the new code, which one works best. So hopefully when this task is done, we can improve our startup process loading time in most apps. And I'm eager to see how much time we can shave off of the startup process.
Yeah, definitely, because we talked about this before. There's sometimes a bit of overhead time, and especially Android, for example, where it takes a bit to start up an MvvmCross app. I think that Nicolas also worked a little bit with his colleague on that. You've got some ideas, right?
Yeah, actually what Thomas is saying is true, because it's difficult to hook a task and to wait for the results somewhere there. But we have some choices. We just need to, as Thomas said, to make a rebase or to pick the changes and to apply them to a new branch. And then we can start from there. But yeah, there are we have some choices to decide there. I read some stuff from Stephen Clary that might help us. Maybe we can make something like a sandbox and wait for any exception that occurs there. But yeah, I think we can do it. We can definitely improve those timings.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great idea, that we make a sort of a sandbox / playground. We already have this in MvvmCross. Maybe this is a good idea to just quickly show on my screen, because I think that anyone that wants to contribute to the test projects can jump in, because it's very easy. You don't need to know the internals of MvvmCross. You just, you know, like you need to know a little bit about Xamarin, and for example, to do, you know, contribution to add to the playground. Just before we do that, yeah, there's a question from Alexander. Hey, do you have any code on standards document? Mark says it's not a real document, but we have some stuff in place for PRs, for example. So what I can do is I will just quickly show my screen. Here, screen share. Share. So we've got on MvvmCross.com, we've got the documentation, and on that in the bottom there's a section about contributing, which helps a little bit with new contributions. It also got a style guide, how you can, you know, how your code style should look like. But other than that, if we just go to the MvvmCross repository, let's, for example, take a look at adding a new issue. So I'm just going to add fresh new issue now. And what you can see here is that it's pre-filled with some steps. So you've got steps to reproduce, accepted behavior, what actually happens. You tell us about that. You tell about the version, which platforms are affected. And the same is actually with making a pull request. So when you make a pull request, the template is going to be filled with standard stuff that you can just fill in. And that will guide you through it, I guess. I hope that makes it a little bit clear.
If I can break in here.
Yeah.
Also, Martin, if you go on open a pull request, find a existing pull request. We also have some bots running whenever you commit some code. For instance, we have Code Factor here, which scans the code for issues. These are mainly code duplicates, but also styling of your code. So, for instance, if you use tabs instead of spaces, it will complain about that. If you put a new line a wrong place, it will complain about that. This is all set up in Code Factor, so it will scan whenever you push something to your branch or your pull request. Other than that, if you follow standard .NET coding style, or if you use ReSharper, that should be enough to get your code past a review.
Yeah, exactly. That's really good to get clear. Yes, and the continuous integration here with MvvmCross will run your actual code with the pull request, and if there's any compile errors, it will catch it, and we will know about it, and we can check the details. All right. Let's see if there are any other questions. So here is, I'm not sure how I should pronounce your name, but where should I ask to get access to the GitHub project? That's a good question. So let me just show you here the organization. In the current organization are 113 people, and you need to be in this organization to actually see this project here. It's a bit annoying that GitHub doesn't allow this to be public. I'm not sure if we can make it or anything. But basically, you can ask us on Twitter, you can ask us on Slack, or just email us, and we will add you to the people here. And that way you can actually see the project, the .NET Summer Hackfest project, and we can assign you to issues. Because if you're not in the people here, we cannot assign you to a certain issue either. So there's another question from Kotmusha. I'm not sure if you told it already, but as an unexperienced programmer, what kind of things are the best to begin with, open source, to learn more about MvvmCross? So I think the basic question here is that how you get started with contributing as an unexperienced developer. And we talked a little bit about this before. So there are probably the first step is to get started on simple things. So let me just go here to the MvvmCross repository. And we're going to look at the labels here. We've got a label for first timers only. Currently, there are 2 things in here, but we are going to add some more first time only issues. And those should be really easy to get started. For example, they already contain a little bit of code. So you just need to copy and paste and make a pull request. Other than that, the things that are really easy to get started with is updating samples, improving samples, and updating documentation. So if you experience anything in real life when working on your project, and you think like, hey, this I don't know how this is, you search for it on the documentation, you can't find it, that would probably be a great start to add documentation about the thing that you're experiencing. So what you can do is you can just open up a new issue saying, hey, I missed this in the documentation. Can we add this? And can you assign me to make this documentation? And that way you can get started really easily and slowly with contributing without having too big of a task. So not any other questions yet. So one thing, let me just go back to Hangouts here and stop the screen sharing. So Nico, one thing that we're going to work on is the presenters. And you started with the iOS presenter and you introduced the system with the attributes there with, like we already added the attributes with MVX fragments before, but now this is going very broad to all the other presenters. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, so basically the idea with the new presenters is to use a set of attributes that we can put on over our view classes. And this is quite good and flexible because it keeps every attribute in the platform project. That means we have completely freedom to set attributes on Android that are quite different from the ones that we can use on iOS, for instance, but still it's the same kind of work that you have to do when you're creating a view with MvvmCross. It means you only have to learn one way to work with it, and then you can extend it to another platform. And it's flexible to add new attributes and to customize the ones that are already provided by the MvvmCross. But basically, again, the idea is to have an attribute for each kind of presentation that the platform has or provides. So for instance, on iOS, there are attributes for showing a view as a tab, or showing a view as a modal. And same for Android, you can have an attribute to show a view as an activity, or as a fragment, or even a dialog fragment, and so it goes. we have already done a new presenter for iOS, for Mac OS. We are working actively now on a new presenter for Android. That is quite exciting because it brings a lot of new features, bug fixes, and improvements. And there's also a new presenter for tvOS planned that, well, it should work the same way as the other ones. So if you know how if you already got started with these presenters, that should be also a part that users can contribute to.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think that's really exciting that we're gonna improve the presenters that much. Like traditionally, with, for example, the Android presenter, you couldn't, you couldn't show fragments in native. You had to use a new presenter, a custom presenter for support, Android support fragments. There was no support for dialogues or for view pages and that sort of stuff. So that's all going to be added, and it's already there, and anyone can try it in the test projects in the main repository. I think this is really, really exciting. And one thing that we also want to do and we want to improve is getting the forms presenters up to date. So the new attribute system is going to be serving as the base for the new forms presenters as well. And this is something we've got on the backlog, but we would like some help with that as well. So if you're experienced with forms and want to help with MvvmCross, feel free to ask me or any other one to get started with that. Let's see what else is on the list for the project. So if we just take a quick look at the project here, we see that .NET Standard is a big part of it. Let's talk a little bit about that. So .NET Standard has been introduced. .NET Standard 2.0 has been, what is it, for 2 weeks now? I think
a week, I think.
Yeah, it's really short time that it's out. So I think that we've looked at this in the past a little bit, and we've got a big issue, or not a big issue, but we've got a issue open for that with a lot of information. I'm just gonna share my screen again so we can have a look at it. So yeah, here we go. So this issue has been open for a while, and I think that this was something we wanted to do for a long time, but the tooling was just really, not there yet. Visual Studio was not up to date with the .NET Standard, and the tooling didn't support implementing it, and it was really difficult. So now with Visual Studio 15.3 been out for a week as well, that should be a bit easier, but still it's not very easy. Like it works now, but it's not just visually check some boxes and then you're ready to go. So what we've did, there's the issue here what says that the choices we need to make. Are we going to support .NET Standard 2.0 right away, or do we go for like 1.3, for example? Will we provide backwards compatibility support for PCL projects? And another one is, do we use multi-target to generate all the different targets for Android, for example, in the iOS, for example, in the Mac, for .NET Standard itself as a .NET Class library? Are we going to generate that from a multi-target project, or are we just going to keep it the same way as we have right now with sort of a switch and bait solution or that sort of thing? So this is mainly about the whole MvvmCross repository for the projects. Another sort of attached issue to this is to move all the plugins over to switch and bait. That's something else we need to discuss. So the tasks here would be to move all the projects over to the new CS project format, which has package references, it's going to be a lot easier to manage those instead of the packages.config. And yeah, use the new NuGet packages. So that means that currently we have AppVeyor, which packages up the NuGets and then publish them. But Visual Studio now have built-in support for packaging the NuGets and then pushing them to NuGet. I think that we can maybe split those up in some smaller tasks because it's really big. And I've added some more information here as well. So we're looking at adding a sort of a new structure to MvvmCross, which is easier to work on, more clear. I would really suggest reading through this. And if you have any comments about it or want to help with this, please jump in. Thomas, can you tell a little bit more about .NET Standard support? What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, I think .NET Standard is great. It's the natural evolution of the portable class libraries. Classically, with portable class libraries, you had all these kinds of different profiles, and you were never sure which version of the, for instance, the reflection API you got, or which subset of .NET you got. And with .NET Standard, you have these very specific version numbers, which give you access to a very rigid set of target platforms that that version supports. So the higher version you go, the less platforms you get, because old stuff is phased out the higher version you go, and that is great for some projects, and maybe for us it's I don't know, not so great, because for instance, if we want to support UWP in its current state, we are forced to have a maximum version of 1.4. So but if we maybe wait until the end of the year with pushing out .NET Standard packages, or switching over to .NET Standard, we could maybe go with .NET Standard 2.0, and that would be great. So there's some trade-offs to which version you pick right now, and I guess we are going forward with the .NET Standard transition, and I guess we are going to stay on version 1.4 for now. With that said, multi-targeting, there's some issues there as well, I think. Jeffrey Huntley talked about that if you wanted to include WPF projects in your multi-target project right now, it wouldn't run on a Mac, because there were some issues with some unit tests not being able to run if the referenced projects had WPF as a target, and issues like that. So we need to kind of be a little bit careful with which target which version we choose of .NET Standard, and whether we do multi-target or not. And then there's all the plugins we have right now. Some of them, such as the file plugin, it will probably be phased out, because all the file and stream and all that stuff is already baked into .NET Standard. So that for instance, that plugin will be just obsolete, and we will have no use for that. And then, yeah, as you said, there's the entire task of whether to switch to bait and switch for the plugins, or whether to just do what we do now with interfaces in the core, kind of the core project of the plugin, and then register the actual implementation in the IOC through the bootstrapper files, or what we are going to do about that. We already have a discussion on GitHub on that. There was an issue today, I think, where contributor raised some questions about that, and we're discussing what to do about the plugins. There's talk about making maybe a new organization just for MvvmCross plugins and making them similar to what James Montemagno has with his Xamarin plugins, and kind of follow the same structure. So use bait and switch, and that singleton pattern he uses for his plugins, and use that in our plugins. But we're not quite sure what to do about those yet. There's a discussion open, and you're all welcome to participate in that. And you can, of course, find it on GitHub in the issues. Other than that, yeah, .NET Standard is great as long as you take precautions of what you're actually going to do with .NET Standard.
Yeah, that's really, I think that sums it up. And I think that what you just said, we're more than open to, have feedback, and, if you have any thoughts about how we could do this and how we could transition to .NET Standard, and also to make it easier for you to transition to that. If we can maybe implement some, some helpers or provide guidance in the documentation, then please, leave a comment or something. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to be working a lot on. And then if I look at the list, what other things we're going to have is we're going to have more improvements for the navigation service. So this is something I myself worked quite a bit on, and Nico did as well, and there's some others. Maurits worked on that. So let's talk a little bit about that. Have you used the navigation service a lot recently, Nico?
Yeah, actually, I applied it to the Star Wars sample. That was my first time with it. I was really impressed because the show view model for result is just awesome. I really like it. I think it's great. It just needs we just need to tweak some parts to be able to make show view model obsolete, but I think it's a real improvement. Also because it's very easy to make unit tests with it. So I think if you are using MvvmCross 5 and you are not using the new navigation service yet, then you should definitely give it a try. More than that, if you want to contribute to it, just jump up to the issue and leave a comment or ask us, and we'll tell you which is the current situation, what is left, what is done. You will have a great time with it because it's all of it is new code. It's really clean, and you will enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And let me just show the screen here. So turn on screen sharing. So we've got the issue you talked about right here. It's issue 634. So what already is in the first version of the navigation service, it's fully async. You can return results. It's type safe. Supports deep linking and URL navigation. Can navigate is supported for URLs, but not yet for normal navigation to types. So what we aim for the second update, which is coming up now, is more bug fixes for the first version. We already partially implemented this. So in the 5.2, what's already in is, for example, that there's no more limitations on what sort of types you can use there. Before, you need to have a class type, which means you can't use an int because an int is a struct. So we removed this limitation. And also the close was still done via the navigation object, but the close method is now fully moved to the navigation service. We also started adding more unit tests, and this is something that we really can use some help on. So we would like to have unit tests for all the situations that happens with navigation. And if you would like to contribute to that, please let us know, and we will help you with that as well. Yeah, so some stuff here, for example, support for dialogues and models. This is also pending on the new presenters for Android, for example. And this is more like a presenter thing that we need to implement. We also want to look at more async await. One change that we did here is that we sort of make a difference between before navigating and passing on parameters, and after navigating, where you have a task initialized, where you can actually run stuff. And what I think is good, if we just try to do a live demo here, so everyone can see it. I've got the MvvmCross solution opened here, MvvmCross_all, and it's got folders for all the different platforms. And what we also got here is the test projects. And we've got, for example, our navigation and a playground here. I'm just going to say this is the startup project. And let's try and fire this up. So if we just, while it's compiling, look here at the code. So we've got a main view model here. In the main view model, you can see this, it's got a command, and the command will call await on the navigation service with view model A. And this will actually pass on a string, and it will expect to return a string to this. In this case, it doesn't do anything with it. But if we look at show B, you see that we actually, at the await, we put the result back in a variable. And we can actually use this here to get out the values. If we just use the auto-completion, we see the object user here got a first name and a last name. So you can just navigate to this new view model, and when it's closed via the navigation service, it will return this value to your original point where you start. And this is really helpful, for example, with a dialogue, when you've got, let's say, a yes or no question. Do you want to do this, yes or no? And then you can like return a bool where you say true or false. And this really helps with that. So here we got the emulator. And this test here has also support for URLs. So when I go to A, probably some breakpoints in there. Let me just clear them all. It will show a fragment with view A. And in there, if I go to A, you can see it's got an attribute saying this is connected to the URL MVX test A. So this is the part that enables URL navigation and enables deep linking with URLs. And in here, we can go to a nested fragment, and we can go to another view. And we can actually close this. What I'm going to try and do is we're going to put a breakpoint here. Go to B. You see that the breakpoint for the navigation is being hit. I press continue. And now it's not continuing to line 52, but instead it's opening this window here. It's a fragment again. And I'm going to close the result. I'm going to inspect the result now. I see that my values are filled with something that's returned from view model B. So just going back to that, there is a, here it is, it's a close, and this closes this window with the result, which is a new user object with 2 parameters filled. So this is really convenient and a better way to navigate than show view model, which was the default before. And as we can see, if we look deeper into this, to the view model, we go up here, and we see it still is inheriting from the MVX navigation object, which enables show view model and close view model. But we would advise to use the new navigation service. This is just there for your convenience to provide backwards compatibility, but it's going to be deprecated in a future release. All right, do you guys have anything more to add on the navigation service?
Yeah, well, maybe one of the parts that is still to make, that we still need to work on, is the reloading state part of the, how do we handle it in the new navigation service. So right now, there is a new life cycle for view models when using the navigation service. And there is a small part of it that still needs to be worked on. So I guess we will be working on that during the Hackfest.
That's a great idea. We really need to get that fixed before we can publish the next release, I think.
Yeah, so the part I'm referring to is when a view model, mainly on Android, gets unloaded because there is low RAM memory or any reason. So we need to handle how do the view model load back when it's loaded again. That is it basically.
Yeah, let's try and finish that up in the coming 2 weeks so we can publish it in the end with the new version, probably 5.2 that we then going to release.
Great.
All right. So we've got about 10 minutes left for the virtual introduction to the .NET Hackfest. Let's see what else is on our list. So we've got .NET Standard support, we've got the new navigation service, more async support, we've got the cleanup of the samples. I think that the major thing that we also have on the list is looking into the IOC, how that currently is. So we need to identify the current performance of the IOC container, the supported features on it, and see if we can improve that. So does anyone have any opinions on that?
I think Mark just left a comment in YouTube about documentation. That's also a great part of what we have planned.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we should not forget about that. So I think that's what I can do is show a little bit how that's done, because it's very important. So I'm gonna open up the screen share. So we've got the MvvmCross repository here. And the first part is that we're going to look at the branches. We've got develop and master here. And what's actually happening is that on master, the actually website code is built. And on develop, we do the development of new code. And that way we can merge changes that are not relevant yet to develop. And then when we publish it to master, it will get published to the website. So the website itself is in the docs folder. And if we take a quick look here, we see that some of the pages, for example, we see here the blog page, and it's connected to the blog.markdown file here on the GitHub. And the same goes with documentation, with the index, with that sort of things. But then if we look deeper into the documentation, we see that there are a lot of pages here. And those pages are inside the documentation folder. And then we see that there's a fundamentals, a getting started section. And this is all also split up in folders. And if we're just going to open up, for example, the fundamentals, and we can look at the new navigation service that we just talked about. And here we see that we've got a markdown file where the whole thing that's in the documentation I'm going to navigate to it. Here it is. It's actually in a Markdown file on GitHub. So when you want to change some documentation or add improvements, what you can do is here there's a sort of a drawing pencil. You press edit this file. You can make some changes in this. I'm just going to do a space here. And then you say, well, you don't have the option to commit directly to the master branch because most people don't have rights for that. But what you can do, it will select create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request. And you can fill in any name here you want. And when you press here propose file change, it will actually open up a pull request in the MvvmCross repository. We can look at it and then we can merge it into the documentation. So this is makes it really easy to get up to speed with contributing to documentation. And the same goes, for example, for the blog post. If you're wondering how we write them, so here you see one of the blog posts about announcing the .NET Summer Hackfest. Here's one about 5.1. If I'm going back to the docs and to posts, I can actually see all the blog posts that we've written. And just open up one, and you can see that the links are in here and the whole text is in here. So I think this is really easy to contribute to documentation.
You can also, if you find a docs page on the website, there's an edit button on the top right corner that you can press, and it will redirect you to the GitHub page and start editing there. And then the process is the same, where you edit the file and make a pull request and submit that pull request.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Do you guys have any other stuff that you think we should be talking about? Do you have any questions? Who's watching right now, or any other topics?
Well, I guess there might be some people there that is listening to us and who wants to contribute, who wants to start working on open source project, who wants to do something with this Hackfest, but maybe find the issues, I don't know, like difficult to work on, or maybe there isn't really well, there are many of them that aren't really well explained. So my recommendation is to tell you, get in touch. So ask us in Slack or leave a comment in any GitHub issue that you find interesting. We can tell you which is the current state, and we can guide you through the process of submitting a pull request. And we can also give you some advices on how to proceed with the work, basically.
Exactly. So if you don't know, feel free to ask. We are really happy to help you. I think any of us is more than willing to do that. And we've got the MvvmCross Slack room. But if you need to talk about some specific issue that you're working on, you can always ping me or one of the others directly. So one question there is from Jonathan Douglas: is .NET Standard support upcoming? So we already talked about this, and the details are on the GitHub issue, and I would advise to listen a little bit back in the podcast or the live streaming we do right now, and you will discover what we said about that, and it's definitely coming.
Okay, so Martin, what do you think about the IOC issue, or also to Thomas?
So what I think is that in general, I have no problems with the IOC in MvvmCross. But I definitely see that we could support some more scenarios, and we could definitely improve the speed compared to the other frameworks. One thing, though, that we've also talked about is that it's not really necessary to use the MvvmCross IOC, because you can use one of the other ones, like, for example, Ninject, for example, I think, and I'm not sure which others, but there are a couple that have like standard drop-in packages for MvvmCross to replace the MvvmCross IOC with their IOC. I think AutoFact, for example, as well.
Yeah.
But so we have to take a look at what's the best way to go with this.
Yeah, so that's maybe a part where .NET developers can join and contribute and help us. If you're not a mobile developer, if you're getting started with it, then that might be an issue where you can really help us.
Yeah, by letting know what is your favorite framework and what are you missing, what are the speed improvements that you want to see, just in general, what your opinion is on this issue. All right, so we are getting close to the end now. Let's go back to the slides and wrap this up. And of course, like we said before, if you have any questions after this, then you can get in touch on the Slack channel. So here are some links for you. The link to the Xamarin Slack channel, get into the MvvmCross channel. Also follow us on Twitter. You can follow the MvvmCross account or any of our private accounts. If you want to support MvvmCross financially, go to opencollective.com/MvvmCross, and you can contribute with a little bit of money. You can, for example, say I'll put $10 a month in, and this will really help us to pay for some services that that would help to continue MvvmCross. We, for example, can use it to pay CI. We can use it to print some stickers or decoration material with MvvmCross logos in it, and we can send it out to you or to user groups around the world to spread the word about MvvmCross. We've also got a LinkedIn group where we discuss a bit of MvvmCross in Xamarin, and you can get in touch with like our sort of developers with using will use MvvmCross. And of course, in the end, contribute on GitHub, and that's where everything happens. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again later in the Hackfest. Thank you all.